Hi, friends, solopreneurs, and ad prodigies. Welcome to episode 6 of the Creative Strategy Podcast. This is the podcast where we dissect the creative processes, idea generation techniques, and secret stories of the world's most talented creative strategists in the e-commerce performance marketing space. I'm your host, Brett Friedman, a smiley guy who lives and breathes creativity, once called a person who seems like he really knows what he's talking about. So that's a little bit about me. Our brilliant guest today is Nicole Crowell, founder and CEO of Performance Purple, a creative strategy consulting firm that does the kind of systematic creative work that you just know makes hit ads on the daily. Incredibly thorough and built through trial and error over half a decade of non-traditional advertising experience. Nicole is generous enough to give us a peek into her idea generation methodology on this episode. She even comes prepared with a full deck. It is absolutely incredible, beautiful. You will learn so much. If you struggle to come up with ad ideas, new concepts, or creative styles, this episode will absolutely transform your effectiveness overnight. I mean, going from uncertainty, staring at a blank page, to knowing exactly what you're going to do every time you sit down. Hi, Nicole. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Would you say hello, give yourself a little introduction?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to chit chat a little bit and talk about just creative strategy and ideation. A little bit about myself. I'm a performance creative strategist with a background in media buying. Been in this industry for a little over 5 years now. Definitely a lot more on the performance side and more recently becoming more branded, working with some big 8 to 9 figure brands on their creative strategy.
Yeah, awesome. Tell me your career path. So you said you had some media buying. How did you get into the industry?
I have such an unconventional way of getting into the industry. I feel like a lot of people do. So first, I'm a college dropout times two. I feel like that's a classic. If you're a marketer, that's just on your resume. But I actually got into marketing from the crypto side, which is a
Hmm.
little interesting. So I was actually a crypto trader, and this is back in like 2017, before like the big rush of
Yeah.
Bitcoin hit like $20,000. Everyone's like losing their mind, made a lot of money. And I started rubbing elbows with some other affiliate marketers who were absolutely crushing. And they had put and invested a lot of their funds from affiliate marketing into crypto. I don't know if you've heard of it. They created a program. It was like a mastermind. It was like this exclusive elite thing. It was called The Watcher's Eye. And
Interesting.
it was hosted by, you may recognize some names, Chase Hero, Zach Folkman, Randall Crowder, and Dan Fleischman. Maybe I'm butchering that. Most people know Dan. And it was pretty cool. I was this little small town girl just like trading crypto, making $9 an hour, working at Palm Beach Pet Resort and Ubering on the side. And they invited me to this mastermind. So I got a sneak peek into crypto, business, marketing, and even real estate. And that completely opened so many doors and met so many cool people and started working with them on their brands and businesses.
Wow. Yeah, definitely a non-traditional path. So
Yeah,
that
can't repeat that.
might not be replicable for most people, being at crypto at the right time and then being in the
Yeah.
right place. But okay, so you went to this mastermind, met these incredible folks. How did you transform crypto into agency, performance marketing
Yeah.
agency work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the main portion of this mastermind was to actually drop ship. I know people are like, do people still drop ship nowadays? I don't know. I feel like it's like an ancient marketing tactic. But back then, they're really pushing subscription-based models and drop shipping using Oberlo through Alibaba, AliExpress. So I actually built my own Shopify store, and all the other members of this Watcher Eye program created their own little stores. None of us knew what we were doing. They all paid, I think, 30 grand to get in, and I paid zero. I was the only sponsored person. So here again, building a Shopify store. This is like 5 years ago, drop shipping products, having no idea what the heck I'm doing. And I go to launch my first ad, and I'm like, oh crap, like it costs money to launch and run ads. So everyone else in the program obviously paid to be there. And I quickly realized they have money, but no time. And I have all the time and energy, but no freaking money. So I ended up becoming like the media buyer for a few of their brands. And they were all drop shipping stores and started running traffic. and figured out Facebook ads on my own, Google natives,
Wow.
etc. And yeah, started media buying, just bootstrapped, figured out for these, you know, bootstrap brand pretty much.
Yeah, that is really impressive. So those early days when you were just like in the weeds, figuring things out, Wild West, how did you learn? How did you get good at media buying? I mean, that's a tough thing to just be, and you're using people's money, right? Like, how is that
Yeah,
experience?
they were paying me and then they were also paying for the ads, which
Yeah,
was a blessing, but it also made me appreciative because I ran a few dollars on my own ads at first. I was like, yeah, it sucks when things are unprofitable very
yeah,
quickly. So um I don't know how I like figured a lot of it out. I think it was just clicking around Ads Manager. It was a lot more complicated, I think, back then than now. It's a lot more account structures and hacking and weird ways to scale, like duplicating your ads like 50 times over and all these silly ad sets. And I feel like now it's a lot more simple, not necessarily easier, but simple in terms of your setup. So it was a lot of playing around. I did have, other people in the mastermind who are also trying to learn Facebook ads. So we bounced a lot of ideas off one another. And of course, the founders, Chase and Zach, they are running this program because they were so successful with it. So they also showed us how to run, how to set up your campaigns and whatnot. I don't think they quite knew what they were doing, but they sounded convincing. So a lot of us bought into it. And their tactics definitely wouldn't work today. Let's just put it that way.
yeah. I think back in the old days of Facebook media buying, like there's some aspect of you can put anything on Facebook and you will make money. It was just about
Yeah.
getting the exact structures. So tell me the structures you were using back then. Obviously, probably some audience targeting stuff going on. Yeah, lots of different campaigns.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how you would have structured a campaign way back then, and then how is it different now? Like, what's the ideal structure right now, current day?
It's like a 180. I think back then it was all about lookalike audiences and creating like video view audiences and percentages off that. Like those who watch 90%, a 1% lookalike off that. Lookalike audiences based off data was like the hidden secret back then, where you would just export your past purchaser data, import it into Ads Manager, and then create lookalikes from that. And they actually worked pretty well back then. Interest, stacking interest-based targeting, all the things that don't work now, which is kind of funny. I would say now most of the brands I work with are pretty broad and very limited on their targeting. They're instead of leaning on the account structure to do the targeting, now it's highly focused on the creative. So just like how the landscape has adapted over the years, so has my own title from like more media buyer, which is more account focused, more creative strategist, where I'm really focused on the ad creative to do the targeting and heavy lifting, because that's what I've seen has worked.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're totally right. Like, and Facebook has been pushing that pretty hard, right? Like, they're like, forget
Yeah,
buying, just creative is everything. Target with your creative. Yeah.
they're they're basically saying we have no data and we have all the data at the same time. So just focus on your ad creative. That's all you have control
Yeah.
over.
Yeah. We have no data anymore. So just let us do everything.
Exactly. Isn't that ironic? So
Yeah. So, okay. Talk to me about creative a little bit. What's your creative process? How do you come up with ideas? How do you, if you have a new brand, for example, new client from scratch, what's your process going through end to end?
yeah, it's a long process. I think it's like a 9 to 10 step process. I talk about this in my course a little bit, but it all starts with alignment. Getting on the same page as your client is really, really important. Understanding basic things like how much are we spending per day is going to completely change your creative strategy. You shouldn't be launching 50 ads a day if you have like $100 a day budget, right? So immediately having like a really strong discovery questionnaire, I send over to the client to fill out. And a lot of questions diving deep into like their avatar, the audiences that they're building out, the why behind the brand, like why was this brand created? What's unique about your brand? How are you different from your competitors? These types of questions I like to get the perspective of the client I'm working with, their take, and then I also like to do a deep dive on research on my own take. So it sets the parameters too, because some brands, especially if you get into the 8, 9 figure range, they are very particular about how their brand looks and feels, and they're a lot less performance oriented. So what that means is they don't care if their brand color is blue, and blue doesn't really work well because it doesn't contrast on your newsfeed because Facebook's blue, for example. They'll rather run an ad that has a blue background or blue wording, even if it's harder to read, because it's on quote unquote on brand, versus using contrasting colors. Like we know orange, reds really pop on Facebook, really help with your click-through rates. That's more performance oriented. So understanding those guardrails ahead of time with the brand, aligning on those. And then I usually shift into more like I returned it from a creative audit to a creative evaluation, because no one likes to be audited. They're like, the audit girl's coming in, and like it immediately makes all the team members just annoyed at you. So now it's an evaluation where I go in and just kind of poke around the ad account, see what's running, what's working, what isn't working, and why, and then also dive deeper and just to like the metrics and stuff like that.
How do you convince a very brand oriented client to let you run performance so that it actually works?
I usually put it under the guise of, well, we don't really know what's going to happen. How about we test both and see how it goes? And usually they can't really argue against that. You test both. There's one very clear winner. Usually it's the performance oriented one. And then you ask them, like, what's more important to you at this stage in your brand or business? Sometimes profits are very important. Sometimes though, the brands can afford to take a bit of a hit or a loss, especially in 2023, where we're okay losing a little bit money on the first sale because we know the LTV of the customer is much higher in the back end. So we're okay taking a little bit of a hit, even if we know better, to keep the brand's like image intact. And they're playing that long-term game, which is very suitable as well. So that's how the discussion usually goes. It's like, well, where are you at right now? And are you okay with sacrificing this amount of performance? And we'll show the gap between the two.
If there's a, if you have an LTV brand, like they're profitable in LTV, but not first order, and they're comfortable with that, how do you shift the creative, if at all? Is it more brand oriented in general? Are there other things you can do to help make LTV higher versus the first order value?
This is kind of a theory I have. It hasn't been proven like statistically, I would say, but something
Love
I've
theories.
noticed, right, is put my tin hat on. But I'm sure you, or maybe haven't, but one thing that a lot of marketers come across is almost like using marketing tactics that focus on a positive emotional mind state and more of a negative fear-based emotional mind state. From my experience, anytime we use fear-based, the initial performance metrics were stronger. It's easier to convince someone that they've got this terrible pain. You agitate the pain, you stab the knife in the back and you twist and you're like, buy my product. Yeah, of course they're going to fall for that. But what I've learned is that those typically, and I hate to generalize, but from what I've noticed, tend to be lower income people in general who are most affected by that. So my theory is if you use more positive mind states and emotional mindsets, you're going to attract that higher income, higher LTV consumer overall. That's a theory. I mean, the data on a few brands has panned out to be true, but it's very hard to make that kind of blanket statement. So it's definitely something worth considering. Because you think about just the mindset of, millionaires and whatnot. I think there's a few ads for different luxury cars. It's like, why don't you run those ads on TV? It's like, my consumers aren't watching TV, why would I do that? So they're just not as impacted by those like fear-based tactics.
Yeah. Are there other types of creative you use to target particular audiences? So you mentioned like, high net worth people, we're going to go positive, low net worth people, we're going to go negative. Are there other kinds of like, oh, I'm trying to target fishermen, like I'm trying to target, people that are into plants. Like, are there any other kind of strategies you have with the creative in that way?
Yes, endless. I don't even know where to start because there's all sorts of tactics to target different people. Have you heard of the book Marketing the Mind States?
I have. I've not read it though.
Okay, it's by Will Leach. It is absolutely phenomenal. Highly recommend. But he goes into the 9 emotional mind states, and when you go through like customer reviews and your review mining, that's one of the key things I'm looking for when I'm doing research. Is like, what emotional mind state are the bulk of my customers in, and what are the emotional triggers that are prompting them to buy? So, the one-line reviews would be like, this is great, love this product. You're not going to get a lot of it. But there's a lot of consumers that will leave like, 4 or 5 line paragraphs, sometimes longer, of why they purchased and more of a story behind it. So taking those longer form reviews, I usually do a character count filter, pull it into Excel, character count filter. Then I'll do an analysis. ChatGPT is phenomenal for this, by the way. Used to be manual, but then you kind of categorize the different mind states. So I'm going to butcher them. I'm probably not going to get all 9, but one of the most common ones is security, emotional and physical safety. This kind of parallels really nicely with Life Force 8 by Cashvertising, Drew E. Whitman. It's a very similar. There's a lot of parallels. Acceptance / belonging. So it's more of a community style creative where you're like a really good brand that does this is Harley Davidson, where they've created like this community around their brand and their motorcycles. Esteem is a really big one. So for luxury brands, it's all about like looking better than your peers, keeping up with the Joneses. Esteem's all about your how other people perceive you, and that could be a core emotional mind state for a lot of luxury focused brands if you're trying to go that high end route. Oh, what are some others? Competence, feeling you want to feel competent. Another is empowerment. You want to feel empowered. I'm drawing a blank on a few more, but there's 9 of them in there. And yeah. And so basically by dissecting it into those 9, then you can really dive deeper into your career strategy and know at least which emotion you're trying to hit and trigger in your consumer. So,
and each of those feelings, when you trigger them, they all end up with purchase intent. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's usually the emotional mind state that is most likely to get them to act. Maybe purchasing, maybe not, but at least it's the most common desire of them. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you can't create that desire in someone. It's something that's like built in you. You can't make someone want to, belong or be accepted. But if they grew up, not ever feeling like they're part of anything, then they're of course going to be more emotionally inclined when they see an ad about community to want to join that community.
And in terms of the creative types, so when you're marketing to these mind states, is it a lot of UGC? Is it really authentic? Are you doing kind of higher end? What are the types of creative that you're making, like graphic design?
Yeah, I would say don't limit it. So pick up an emotional mindset and then hit every single creative type, right? Because we know Facebook algorithm optimizes by the actual placements and also the type. Facebook knows who purchases when they see a static ad, just a plain non-moving graphic, versus a video ad. They know which type of consumers where to send different types of creatives to. So you want to maximize those placements. That's why the Advantage Plus shopping campaigns, just throw it all in there, but make sure you're maximizing placements. If you only throw in videos, you're missing out on I don't know, probably more than 50% of your traffic is statics. From my experience, especially in Q4, we see the rise of CPMs, cost per impressions are increasing. It's getting very expensive. A lot of big brands are dumping their Q4 budgets, pouring gasoline on the fire, hoping so it's like the Super Bowl for marketing. And because of those increased costs, it's very heavy video right now. Statics are actually notorious year over year for my brands, have been absolutely crushing this time of year. Just big bull, Black Friday. Here's my best deal, front and center, no video. GIFs work really well. That's 2. So they have a little bit more movement, stop motion graphic type, but no more than like 5 to 8 seconds.
Yeah, I've definitely always found with sales, the bigger the sale number, like 50% off, and the bigger you can make that on the screen, the more likely people are to click it.
Definitely. And then there's like some color psychology you can get into to really make it enticing and make the old price slashed out and smaller, and the big sale nice and big. Yeah, it could be fun. There's lots of little performance hacks you can do to really entice people.
Yeah, give me a few more. So color psychology, what are some
there's some
hacks
ones from back in more of my affiliate days where I was running supplements. Even putting this was an old one, I'm not sure if this still works because it's probably overused, putting a red border around your ad and framing it just static. For whatever reason, our click-through rates always jumped up. A red or orange border. In fact, I think it became so popular with more affiliate or not the most branded of brands, more performance-oriented brands, put it that way, that Facebook started like flagging those types of ads immediately when they saw that. They're like, oh, you must be a sketchy affiliate because you're putting that border. Before and afters, obviously crush if you can ever do a before and after. Split screens in general, even if you have one side of static with your Black Friday sale, one side with your video, seem to work really well. Contrasting colors. So anytime you have text overlays, make sure it's readable. It's crazy how many ads I see, and it's like this tiny font or this weird color that blends into the background. It's those little details that really add up. Those are the ones that come to mind. I like right now too for Black Friday, because if we're in, in that era, is tickers. So they kind of go slowly across the screen. Adding a Black Friday sale ticker across the bottom of any sort of video or static turned into GIF works really well too.
Yeah. Do you find that if you take evergreen top performers and add something like a ticker or just, hey, this is on sale, do those perform well? Have you tried that format before?
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. We take our top performing evergreen ads. When we launch Black Friday, we don't just stick to remarketing efforts. We hit every stage of the funnel. We're hitting top of funnel, middle funnel, and bottom. And for top of funnel, you can't make it too salesy. Or you can actually. We've run some statics. They actually do very well top of funnel because the consumers are so primed. They're ready to just buy. And if they've been buying a few items, well, what's one more pair of boots? Who cares, right? We're already in that buying mindset. So yeah, run your big sale static to top of funnel, but also take your top performing videos and add that ticker. Easy. It takes a video editor maybe 2 seconds to do, and it's a top converting ad already, so why not?
Can you choose a brand, and for just 5 minutes we'll just go into it, come up with some ideas, use your process? Down for that?
Do you have one that's top of mind?
Ooh, I'm thinking plants, because you have all those lovely plant images and actual plants behind you. Do you know Bloomscape? Have you heard of that company? All right, so if you were, imagine you just signed Bloomscape, new brand, they sell plants, obviously. Walk me through, what are you doing? How are you coming up with ideas for creative?
Oh my goodness, where are we going to start? There's so much. Usually what I like to do is, like I mentioned, the audit first. So I'm more so in the ad account and seeing what's being launched before I start generating ideas. So a strong research process is going to be absolutely key. What I'm probably going to do is I'm going to ask the owner of Bloomscape to rip or pull down all the reviews. So I could see like 38 reviews on the bamboo palm, 18 on the Guzmania. It's quite the name. To pull all the reviews and separate by their product. So I don't have to go in and click them. If they're unable to do this, which they should in the back end of Shopify, it's pretty easy. Then I'll actually go in and click and open up all the reviews and start to see if there's anything worthwhile. So a lot of these from just a quick glance are pretty short. So probably not going to get a whole lot. What I'm then going to do is like check their social media. I'm going to check like what kind of comments they're getting, what type of questions, especially on their ads too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've access to their ads manager, but
no, that'd be awesome.
You're right.
They were,
If not, what you can do is go into Facebook ads library, of course, and you can pull up this brand. Yep. And you can start looking at their ads, seeing what the comments are, etc. And this is stuff that would come up in the audit as well.
Yeah. Oh, one ad, of course.
One ad. Okay. Not a whole lot. That makes your research process, at least the internal research, pretty freaking short.
Makes it easy for you though to beat.
True. Now, if this might just mean only one active ad. So if they've turned the ad off, then of course you're not going to see it here. That's why it's really important to use spy tools.
Spy tools. Yeah.
Do you use adspy.com? Have you heard of that one? It's Facebook ads.
No, I've seen Foreplay. I've used Foreplay a lot.
Yeah, this one. I don't think I have my subscriptions active. So I turn this on and off when I have a brand I need to dive deeper in. But what I really like about AdSpy is you'll see their non-active ads. Foreplay recently added Spider feature, which also does this. So you can kind of see a history. And Foreplay's Spider tool, I think, is recent, and like in the last 30 days, I want to say, maybe 60. So prior to that, you would have to go to something like this, AdSpy, and search. What I really like about AdSpy that Foreplay doesn't do, obviously this is just for spying on meta ads, is you can actually filter. Yeah, you can see a little preview. You could filter by, on the bottom left, it says date, recent on top. You can filter by longest running. And so you can see ads that actually have social proof associated. So if this brand had a ton of ads running, not only can I see, what's most recent, but I can see what ad has the most spend, because obviously if it's got a ton of impressions, it's likely to have the most spend. And you can see like the top comments and whatnot, and reverse engineer and spy them that way. It's also really great for competitive spying, because one of the downfalls of Facebook ad library that they fixed semi-recently, I'd say in the last year, is that you used to not be able to just search keywords. You had to only search by the brand name. So if you didn't know your competitors' brands, you'd be kind of SOL with Facebook ad library. You have to know the names of the brand to find their fan pages. But you wouldn't be able to find their whitelisted pages. Now, this has changed recently. Facebook ad library, you can do that all now, but before you couldn't. So AdSpy is like one of the OG tools I used 5 years ago to get some of this data that no one else had at the time.
But now you can actually do this in the ad library. So like if I put in, like, give me an example of a search term, just like plants or something like that.
Yeah, you can put in plants. Before you couldn't put in plants. So now you can start to see different fan pages that have the word plants in it. It's a little bit better, but I think if you continue to scroll down, it will just show you ads that don't have the word plants in the fan page name. So I think there's one that said favorite flowers, Joni's flowers. It doesn't have the word plants in it. These ads never used to show up. This is recent, and people don't realize this. I don't know when they made this update in Meta, but yeah, you wouldn't have seen these ads. So now you can search, even if the ad has the word plants in the headline or in the body copy, it will now show up here. So your ability to do research for free on Facebook ads library has gone up tenfold. And no one's talking about this. I'm like, dude, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Adspy.com was, I think, like $119 a month.
Wow.
So it really adds up.
Yeah. Are there other tools that you use? Like what is your favorite go-to text?
Adspy.com for meta ads. I wrote a few down because this is probably one of the most popular questions I get. AdBeat for native ads, which a lot of people don't seem to run native ads anymore. They're very they're very quiet. I guess they're very on the DL.
Is that a programmatic platform?
Yes, I believe so. I'm not sure about the terminology.
Oh yeah, is it its own ad network, or is it using Facebook? Like, tell me what it.
Oh yeah. It's using its own ad network. Yeah. Trying to think of some of the most popular ones I used back then. It's been a minute. I'm drawing a blank, but it'll come to me.
Is there anything now that's like cutting edge that you use, or you're mostly doing things manually?
What do you mean?
Are there any like technologies like AdSpy or anything else that you use?
Yeah. So AdBeat was the spy tool equivalent for native ads that I use. For YouTube, the AdSpy tool is TubeSift. And then for TikTok, my favorite is PP ads. And a lot of these I turn on and off, because to have all 5 of these on at any point is a lot of money per month. So I'll turn them on and off when I need to actually spy on a brand.
Yeah. In terms of different channels, so you mentioned like TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. How do you change your creative across different channels if you're working with something other than Facebook?
Yeah. Usually a great approach is to make your content to feel as organic as possible, right? Because most people don't want to be hit with an ad. If it looks like an ad and feels like an ad, unless I'm super primed to buy, so I'm like that bottom of funnel type consumer and I'm very interested, I'm probably not going to be pretty happy seeing an ad. So to make it native, it's going to vary per platform, of course. So like on TikTok, for example, you should have that TikTok type vibe. It should be UGC shot. It shouldn't be overly professional. It should look like a homegrown video of someone, more organic, talking to the camera, less polished, I would say, overall. And then just how the text overlays are placed. So for TikTok, I call it bubble style text. When I'm talking to my editor, I'm like, use the TikTok bubble text. There's got to be a better term for it, but basically it's like black text, usually with a white bubble background. It could be any color, but it's very unique to TikTok. That font style and having that background screams TikTok organically made. So if you're running content on TikTok, use that. Don't use some swirly cursive font that no one can read and it's on brand. No one cares. I'm just being frank here. You know, match the platform that you're on. For Facebook, I don't remember the stat, but it's something ridiculously high. It's like 60 or 70% of users scrolling on Facebook watch videos and content with the sound off because they're like in the grocery or at a line at, I don't know, at the bank or something. So they don't have the volume on. So if you don't have subtitles, which is crazy to say to run content without subtitles on Meta right now, then you're missing a huge opportunity because people just won't watch your content unless it's like crazy visually engaging, but they won't know what's going on. So little details like that really matter.
Yeah. And TikTok is more sound on, right? You would always.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
important.
TikTok is all sound on. Yeah.
Yeah. And then do you do any YouTube or like other channels or mostly Facebook, TikTok?
Mostly Facebook, TikTok, for the brands I work with, but often sometimes they'll ask me to go to YouTube. YouTube is a very different style, I would say overall. I think the most notable is like the thumbnails are always like, you know, someone's super surprised and big flashy bold letters and some silly, you know, hook caption. If you ran something like that on Facebook, people would be like, wait, what are you doing? Like, no, none of their friends and family are posting stuff like that, so it screams that. But YouTube, it fits a little bit more. So of course you have to have that style thumbnail, and then YouTube's usually longer form in general, and it is usually a lot more polished, and it does feel like an ad.
Yeah. Do you play around with organic media at all, or are you fully performance?
Fully performance, I think I follow, you know, where the dollars are. Usually organic people don't get paid nearly as well because, you know, it's organic. But I do find that a lot of the concepts that work well on paid also work on organic and vice versa. So usually I work very closely with the organic team. And sometimes I'll go through and I'll see like a really strong TikTok post organic or an Instagram post. I'm like, I want that. Can I run that as an ad? You know, that's great. And we'll repurpose content pretty frequently.
Yeah. 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 I love to use organic as a testing ground because it's free
Yeah.
and you can just run infinite things there and then, oh, okay, this one took off. Like, let's go put some money
True.
behind that.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Do you have any major predictions for the future of our industry?
Ooh, I have always been a huge tech girl. Like I said, I was one of the first in crypto back then. I'm a huge advocate for AI, and I do think over time AI will almost completely replace creative strategy, which is kind of like dun 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 because it's my field, right? Why would I say that? But I do think a lot of my processes have become so efficient with the use of AI. I'm able to single-handedly work with as a solo creative strategist 4 or 5 brands pretty easily on my own, and that speaks volumes. I do think, well, it's already here. AI generated videos are absolutely going to be the new UGC. Especially when I hear about some brands and how much they're paying UGC creators. I'm like, oh boy, that's not going to be a thing in a few years. So it'll be very interesting. I feel like you'll have one kind of master AI person who's kind of like a creative strategist who's leveraging AI to create videos and to create statics and ads. Having a background in media buying is always going to be important, and copywriting, but I think there's going to be one like creative person. You're not going to need video editors. You're not going to need post-production editing. You will probably, well, I think you will still need someone to shoot the raw assets, but I have seen some photographers use AI generated photography already. So I'm not even sure how much of that you're going to need. You're going to need a render of a bottle or whatever your product is. And then that's pretty much it. You can just run an entire ad account.
Yeah. So as the cost of content creation goes to zero, as you're describing, like, yeah,
Yeah.
you cut out all the video generation, the post-production. What does this person's role look like? Is there still that strategy part in the beginning? And how do you see that changing from how it is now to maybe that future case?
I look at it as like a puppeteer. There's still going to be someone in that strategy role, kind of moving all the pieces and making sure everything stays aligned. And I think that person has to be very AI equipped. They have to be very AI competent, or they're just going to get out competed by those who are using AI. You know, people are like, oh, it's not going to replace copywriting. I'm sorry, but it already is. Like, I have some background in direct response copywriting. I've read a few copywriting books, but I wouldn't sit there, well, I have, and write an entire VSL. I have done that. I can't say I haven't. I have done that. It was absolutely painful. But as long as you understand the framework and the structures, needed to create that copywriting VSL that used to take hours and hours and hours to write and edit. Now with AI, you can give it the same structure, the same framework, and zhuzh it a little, and it can, populate pretty quick. And it's pretty dang good, and it's only getting better. I believe it came out ChatGPT last November. So we're almost on a year of having ChatGPT, I believe. And I remember submitting some of my first prompts, like asking it to write headlines and hooks, and it was absolutely atrocious. And now it is so powerful. Like I said, I predict that it will absolutely take over the bulk of creative roles in advertising.
Yeah. So what do we do? What's the next step? What does Nicole do in that post AI world?
I think there's going to be a lot of people who turn into AI gurus. We're kind of already seeing that shift where it's like, you still need that background in creative strategy. You still need to know what the frameworks are and the underlying structure of ads to convert people. Like we all know, like problem, agitate, solution is like the basic modular content blocks to create a video ad. Well, it gets much more granular than that. When I reverse engineer some ads using AI, there's probably closer to 15 different modular ad blocks that are actually created. Basically, every single line of copy can be converted into an ad block that you can then script with and repeat. So you can take any of your top performing ads, break it down to its fundamentals, and then use this brand new framework that you have that can be applied to any other brand that you work with. So those who know the frameworks are going to do very well in this next phase.
Yeah. So what are some more of these frameworks? Or is that by my course? You're like, you can find out if you click down below.
For $9.99. No, just kidding. I do have in my course. I am a pretty open book. I do share freely on Twitter and LinkedIn all the time. I do have a few docs. We could screen share. I could pull up some.
Yeah, do it. I'd love that. That'd be awesome.
Hopefully I'm not revealing too much craziness. Okay, so when I talked about, you asked me early on, like, what are the steps to creative strategy very loosely? I was like, oh, I don't know. There's so many steps. This is basically an outline of the steps intro to creative strategy. So ideation, what you're really focused on is this step right here. So we talked about alignment, research, avatars. We haven't really talked about too much, but I do think is a really key component, understanding your consumer. That's kind of gets into the emotional mind states when you're review mining. But ideation, all right. This is my slide deck from a talk I did at the Performers. It's an online community. But what I think you really want to see is something like this, steps to ideation process. So one mistake that I'm seeing pretty often is people are trying to ideate on their own, and they're not using their teams to gather different ideas. And I really do think there's some power in bringing people together and actually generating ideas together. I think one of the reasons why we aren't doing that is fear of judgment. And so creating a judgment-free zone, it sounds cheesy, but it's so true, is absolutely key. And even with yourself, sometimes we judge our own ideas and we limit ourselves in our creativity because we're like, oh no, that's silly, or oh, that's stupid. But really removing those, limiting beliefs and creating a judgment-free zone is absolutely huge. Or you can obviously rock it solo with AI, which is my bread and butter because I'm a soloist right now. Align, define your guardrails, so go into that, pick your ideation prompt, and then pick the best ideation technique. So long story short, this is kind of the formula you use to have a beautiful ideation session. People, prompts, technique, and guardrails. And then this is really important too, actually, I don't want to overlook this. After you've generated a long list of ideas, most people stop there. I'm like, no, the whole point is to evaluate and select the best ideas and then prioritize. So I really, really, really want to make sure we cover that. And how to actually do that, because I do have a technique. So gathering your people, I'm going to skip a few of these because they can be lengthy, but long story short, you just want to get a diverse group of people. Everyone, if you can, from like the CMO all the way down to junior media buyer or like the new person on your team, because they'll have a fresh perspective, a brand new way to look at things. And it's often very surprising and really great, really insightful. Those are questions that you can ask someone, your team, basically to get them ready and encourage them to generate new ideas. But these 5 alignment questions are really important, right? So before I go into an ideation session with either AI or with a group, it's really important to ask, like, what is my goal or objective here? It could be as simple as we just want to generate more ideas. Cool, but that's very broad. what I really want to get down to is these sub questions. Who am I targeting? What platform or marketing channel is this for? You mentioned like, how's it different from TikTok versus Meta? How sophisticated my market is. This comes from the book Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz. And what is the awareness level my audience is at? Also from that book, Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz. When you start to answer these questions, you can be like, okay, we know we're going to be running ads for Meta. We're going to be targeting females ages 25 to 35 who struggle with weight loss and who are greatly affected by the emotional mindset state of esteem. So, and then we are in a highly sophisticated market. Maybe we are a supplement company. We have many competitors. So being just simply identifying the problem and solution isn't going to work. And then what awareness level is my audience at? They are super aware, very skeptical, and we need to make sure that we come up with something unique to them that makes them feel like this product's going to work. So we might need to create like a sub niche or something like that. Anyways, you don't have to get that granular, but that's an idea of how this can kind of set some guardrails so your ideation session actually gets you the end goal of what you desire. So you're not just creating a bunch of ideas that don't go anywhere. This graphic right here, I think, is really helpful. When we say consumer awareness, we have unaware, problem aware, solution aware, product aware, and most aware. Those are the 5 stages of consumer awareness. And you can see different types of content. This is just very general that work best for that awareness level. So for a completely unaware audience, they've never seen your product before. They don't even identify as having a problem, right? Stories and secrets, my secret way I trimmed body fat off some, I don't know, you've seen them before. Usually they go to like an advertorial or some sort of listicle. Sometimes they're completely non-related to your product at all. It could be like some breaking news story and you have no idea how it ties into your product, but that's part of the process. You're very indirect. Versus most aware is more like your Black Friday start strategy. So you have very top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of funnel, parallels very nicely for your content. So most aware, they're aware they have a problem. They've seen multiple solutions out there. They believe that your solution is the right one for them. They really just need a reason to buy. Maybe they've got some final objection that you need to handle. Maybe it's the price. Maybe it's the quality. Maybe they just want more social proof, something like that. So you're handling those objections and you really just be like, here's a product, here's the price, go buy it. Black Friday sale, basically. So now you've aligned and defined your guardrails. Now you're going to pick your prompt. Most people are familiar with Life Force 8, cash advertising. The 9 human wants are kind of secondary, also from cash advertising. Marketing the mind states, we already talked about this one a little bit. Those are the 9. And I've got some additional angle prompts. Each one of these are really great for just rattling off ideas. But there's the Life Force 8. I'm not going to go over them. There's the 9 human needs or wants. There we go. There's the marketing mind states. I hit a few of these, but I definitely forgot a few. So autonomy and freedom, nurturance, achievement, accomplishment, and engagement experience for the ones that I missed prior. All right, so now you've picked your prompt. Here's a couple more ideas to get going. And now you're going to pick the best ideation technique. This is something that you're like, well, how is AI going to remove all jobs? It's because most people aren't aware of these 9 ideation techniques. Maybe they've heard of 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4, but few people have heard of all 9. And these are things like, as your career strategist in your field, this is what you need to become really great at, is understanding the techniques, understanding the prompts and the frameworks, and then being able to combine them. So some of these are more self-explanatory. Let me know if you want to spend time going into each of these, because I do have a slide for each.
Oh, can you tell me about 3 Horizons? That's the one that I don't know. I'd love to see that one.
This one here is a little bit more focused on your business at large. So when you're working with like bootstrap brands, you're really in this first section. The whole purpose of the business is to extend and defend your core business, right? You're trying to create a moat around your business so that your competitors can't just steal your ideas and run off with them, right? You have to make your business defensible. So your content strategy should be all about improving upon your existing ideas and scaling more through iterations than anything else, because you can't afford, you don't have a lot of profits, you don't have a lot of time and data, you don't have it's more challenging, I should say, to come up with like these out of the box creative ideas. You really want to stick to your basics, stick to your core concepts, and slowly iterate your way up until you become defensible. The second phase of businesses is Horizon 2. You want to build emerging businesses, is really expansion. So now you want to expand upon those existing ideas. Maybe you want to expand to new avatars and new audiences that you haven't tested before. Maybe your products have all been male centric and now you want to go female, or maybe you've always ran traffic to younger demographics, but you want to expand to older, et cetera, et cetera. And then third is disrupt. As you scale to the 8-9 figure, you've really done the first two really, really well. And now you're going to create like all these crazy content variations. Now you're really moving the needle. You're becoming a thought leader in your space. And people are really resonating with your content and you're being very creative. I think you have a lot more wiggle room up here to play with unique concepts and ideas. So some of the bigger brands that come to mind are like Rise Superfoods. You can see they're always testing something new and unique. If you're looking for like new ideas, they're one of the better brands to spy upon for actually kind of pushing the needle in a creative sense. Versus if I look at, I don't want to call any names because I don't want to make it sound negative. I can think of a few brands that are more in this stage, and they're just sort of using templated creative strategies and content plays over and over again. Not quite in this disrupt phase. So that's the idea behind this one, is to create content based on where the business is at. So once you've kind of put that all together, the last portion, so now you've got a giant list of ideas, is to put it in some sort of idea box. Actually, I have it linked out here so you can see a little bit better. What's really important with your idea box is obviously to consider the impact that you think that idea will actually be, and then also the ease of build. This is just set to kind of my default, but this is going to change depending on the brand you're working with. If it's a smaller brand, you might be able to move faster. So you'll edit these days to make sense. Maybe you can do same day type ads, and that's considered quick. Regardless, the point is to have some sort of scale of how fast it is to build. And this is a bit subjective, but the impact you believe that ad's going to have. If it's a 1-star impact and really hard to build them, why are you wasting your time on it? Then obviously the priority is going to be low. Let's wait on this, right? So the goal is to set the priority based on the impact and ease of build for that. And it's not limited to just content production, which a lot of people think creative strategy is all about content. It definitely is. But there's a lot of media buying tactics that, as a creative strategist with a media buying background, I'm obviously very, maybe my hand is too much in that jar. I'm definitely helping out and sending like, oh, here's a new media buying tactic we can test out. Or here's a landing page we can design, or here's some new headlines that we want to test. And all those ideas are in one massive database like this. And what's cool about Notion is you can filter. So you can filter by the, what do I call it?
Categories?
The department. Here. So if you just want, if the content team comes in, all they have to do is filter for content production. Then they can see all the ideas that are tagged content. So you can keep the departments a little separate, and that works really well when you're scaling with big teams.
Awesome. I think it's so smart to have the like ease of build out. I think that's something that is very often overlooked when you're doing creative production, and it's like, why aren't you, we deliver every week. Why isn't this concept made? And it's like, well, this requires a studio and studio shoots. We got to hire people. We got to get people in the studio. We got to get everything right. And there's post-production. Yeah. It's so smart to balance that with the impact that you think the concept's going to have.
UGC content always takes, I would say, twice as long as you think it's going to. I feel like regardless of the relationship you have with the creator, for some reason, something always gets delayed. It could be simply like billing for the creator, or the time it takes to actually get the raw, or maybe you're not happy with the raw content, so you have to ship it back, and then post-production, as you mentioned. Yeah, it always takes a lot longer than you expect. So if you have a full month stacked of UGC, it's like, you're probably not going to launch anything for a while. And I think that expectation with the client is really important. This is something that's usually client shared. So we'll actually bring this up on calls and talk about the priority. So it's not just me setting the priority for the team, the creative side, it's also working with the brand or the client, being like, hey, let's wait on this one because, this is going to take forever to build out.
What's the ideal cadence that you use for different size brands, so like startup, SMB, big brand, how often do you want to produce and launch new creative?
It's so subjective on how the account's performing and what our creative testing budget is. Obviously, if things are going well, you have a lot more wiggle room because hopefully going well means profitable and you can test a lot more creatives. But if things aren't going well, then you shouldn't be launching 20 ads a day, right? You want to be a little bit more slow and methodical. Depends also on the founder and their comfortability levels too. How much budget should you allocate to each test to feel like it's statistically significant so that you can make the right conclusions from that data. Every brand's going to differ. Usually a good rule of thumb is like 3 times the CPA. But if your cost per acquisition is like $60, a lot of brands are not going to be feeling comfortable spending $180 per ad variation. Let's say you have a video ad and 3 hooks. $180 for 3 hooks variations adds up very quick, right? And if it's not profitable, then they're probably going to be pretty upset about that, right? So I hate to say it, but it is very, very subjective. And it's that classic, it depends.
If you could ask anything to all of the future people on this podcast, mostly creative strategists, founders like yourself, running agencies, but people who are experts in the field, what would you want to ask them?
Maybe I like going into the more deep philosophical questions, but I'm always very curious what motivates people to keep going in this field, especially if you've hit a certain level of success. Because that's something I'm personally struggling with, is my why, my purpose. I think I've done very well for myself as a career strategist, but I'm kind of at the point, it's like, okay, what am I building for? And I think what that's translated into in the past year is shifting from brands that perhaps care about profits and performance over anything else just to make a quick buck, versus working now with brands that have a more holistic meaning and value behind them, and they're trying to actually do good in the world. So I would definitely be very curious to ask fellow career strategists and brand owners and whatnot what motivates them, and listen to that.
Yeah, great question. Okay, now I am going to ask you the past few guest questions. So
Okay.
first, what is the range of income that you can make as a creative strategist?
Oh, that is a good one. I know a few people who have taken my course and they're just starting out and they're making their first couple $1,000s a month. At my peak, I've hit 25K a month as a solo career strategist. So I'm sure there's others that have made more, but that's my peak before I start pulling my hair out and losing my mind.
Yeah.
If you work in an agency, the most I ever made was about 9K a month.
Yeah.
And some of the clients that were being billed monthly, one of them was $17,000 a month, and another one, I can't name names, but was $27,000 a month, for perspective. Wow. And I had about 13 of those types of clients. Yeah. So agency was not the place to go for me and my talents. Definitely recommend rocking it solo.
Yeah. Real quick, because I'm interested, and I hear this a lot. I mean, I've worked at agencies as well and done things on the side, and there's a difference in terms of the quality of the service that you were giving at the agency, or rather than even quality, like what was the difference between what you were providing for those clients that were spending so much versus what you do as a solo person, and why do you see that kind of discrepancy?
A fraction of what I do now was provided when I was at the agency, mostly because I just had so many brands. I had 13 brands. It's like, imagine trying to do strategy for 13 brands every single day. I would have to block out my week and be like, all right, day 1, I only can do brands 1 through 5. Day 2, 5 through 10. Day 3, it was absolutely ridiculous. It's unfortunate, but when I will say for the agency side, you did have a pod. So it came with a media buyer, a growth strategist, and a creative strategist, and you had an account manager who would answer your questions directly. So there is that advantage. And you did have a kind of CMO type role who was overseeing the various pods. But I would say it varied so greatly which pod you got assigned to. So there's kind of like the A-level pod, the B, and the C. So depending on how much you're paying the agency is working at, you may have got that C or B level pod and you weren't working with perhaps the more senior marketers.
What do we need to stop talking about in creative strategy?
Stop calling content plays creative strategy. So an example would be like um, sticky notes. If you write something on a sticky note, now apparently that's you have a creative strategy. I'm like, no, you wrote a singular line of copy on a sticky note, or maybe a benefit on some sticky notes. That is not a creative strategy, it's far from it. So we definitely need to, I think, work on creating a set of vocabulary that's consistent. um, Stop calling your hooks angles. That's driving me absolutely nuts. A hook is not an angle. It can be, but oftentimes is not. And an angle is not a concept. So I think we need to stop blending these terms together and start clarifying what each of these terms are.
How do we defeat the AI in the future?
I am pro AI. I don't think we necessarily need to defeat it unless it's obviously attacking us, and yeah, that's going to be a problem. But I'm pretty pro tech, and I think we'll find a way to work with it eventually. I just hope it's before it causes too much damage.
What are the processes that you know that I don't know? And since you don't know what I know, what are the processes that you know that most creative strategists don't know?
They are taking into consideration the market sophistication. I think a lot of e-commerce brands, they are not the first to market, so their tactics are all about um, comparing themselves to their competitors. And I think that's can work in your favor in some situations, but sometimes you're shooting yourself in the foot and you're giving free traffic to your competitors by doing that classic us versus them. So I definitely think that's important. What was the second portion of your question?
Yeah, it's just what's a process that you know that I don't know or that most
Oh,
creatives don't know?
so one of the processes is actually tying in the market sophistication basically on like your Y column and then your consumer awareness level on your X, and creating a grid. And you can have AI do this. I've already done this. This is something I've shared for free on Twitter, but it'll tell you what you should focus on in each of the little cells for based on the consumer awareness level and the market sophistication. What should your overarching creative strategy be focused on for that brand, which is really helpful. It gives you the context behind the strategy.
Yeah. Wow. Love that. Okay, this is my question. Do you think we will ever, as humans, achieve immortality?
Yeah, I like oh, what's that show? Altered Carbon, where you basically just upload your consciousness into a chip and then you can just replug into your body. So it's a sleeve essentially. You can replug yourself into different sleeves. I do think there's going to be like a whole power shift and dynamic for control over that. Because of course, if you can just re-sleeve yourself, upload your consciousness into any form and continue to live forever, then we have way too many people, or we need to definitely expand other planets. So it'll be very interesting.
Yeah. Okay, final two questions. Do you have any recommendations in terms of like media, like books to read, like you mentioned earlier? Any movies, people to follow, any inspirations, people that you follow?
I'm a huge fan of books. I mentioned a few. I'll just recap them. Cashvertising is Drew E. Whitman. Breakthrough Advertising is Eugene Schwartz. Marketing the Mindstates is Will Leach. Those are probably my top three for career strategy at the moment, but there's all sorts of really great ones on like just digging deeper into the psyche and making sure they are marketing to the subconscious mind, because the most of our decisions are happening subconsciously. As much as we like to think we're in control, we really aren't. We're all just little programmed monkeys running around. So if you know which buttons to press, you can pretty much make us all dance. So
And what's your call to action? Like, what do you want to tell the crowd? Where should we follow you? What should we buy? Where can we?
Yeah, I'm on all the socials pretty much. My for business and career strategy, find me on LinkedIn, and Twitter is probably my bread and butter. I'm always posting little nuggets of wisdom and all sorts of freebies there. And if you want more, I do consulting. I also have a course, and then I am a fractional career strategist. So I'm still have my skin in the game. I'm still actively practicing creative strategy with brands. So if you're interested in any of those, just feel free to DM me on Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole. This was absolutely
Of
incredible,
course.
packed with value. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this with me.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. I'm down to do another.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love to have you back on. So thank you.